And now, the First Alert Storm Team, live from the 13 Now digital desk. This is Tropic Topics, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning and Mariana Toyota.
Welcome to Tropic Topics Season 2. Dope, as for those Spanish speakers out there. I'm not very good at Spanish. My wife can speak Spanish, but already getting off topic.
Already on a tangent.
We can
Oh,
see.
goodness.
This is going to be a good year. We are at the beginning of hurricane season, so typically we do this on Thursdays, doing it a little different this year. We're going to try to bring you more content and also less content, if that makes sense. We're going to have a lot more of these where we're individually doing them, because what we want to really do is highlight when stuff is going on. We felt a lot of times last year that we were up here talking about nothing. And we don't want to talk about nothing this year. So when things are going on, we'll be split between the three of us, and we'll do when we can. We may even have one morning update and one afternoon update to kind of accommodate the three of our schedules. There may be two of us, and we did this tangent last year too, but I won't go into all of the possibilities.
Yeah. When you need to know something, you'll know something.
Exactly. Yeah, that's perfectly put. So that's how we're going to do it this year. So make sure that if you are a loyal Tropic Topicer, ooh, I like that. We may have to add that to the list.
I think we should make them decide what they're called.
What they're
our fans.
called?
Yeah. We should do a little poll on that or something.
Well, if you are loyal to the show, maybe write a comment as to what you want to call yourself, or our fans of the show call it. Make sure you're paying attention, because we'll be putting them out when we're going to do the shows, and we'll do updates like that. And I'm going to try to continue to do tropical updates as much as possible. I've been doing that, if you're a follower of my personal page, quite a bit on this last storm. I won't be posting updates when there's nothing to post. So that's kind of a way to keep up with the hypers out there, because we've already had a massive attack of social meteorologists that have just absolutely loved to post the GFS fantasy canes. They've been real good at it this year. The GFS has posted a lot of fantasy canes. I feel like I'm sinking in my chair. But it's possible. But anyways, we're going to dive right into it. It is the beginning of hurricane season climatologically, meaning that this is the start of the Atlantic Basin hurricane season. We're going to start off with the currents in the Gulf of Mexico and our sea surface temperatures. A lot of hoopla articles about the loop current, how warm the water is over the Gulf of Mexico. So that's where we're going to start. Anybody want to add anything to start off before I dive right in here?
I say go for it, Ross.
Go for it. Okay.
Go for it.
Go for it. All right, so what I've highlighted is a couple of the known currents that are across the Gulf of Mexico. One of the most famous, the loop current. It got famous because of, you guessed it, Hurricane Katrina, and went across the peninsula of Florida, then set up shop right over that loop current, and rapidly intensified. And this was back in 2005, and believe it or not, since 2005 we have gotten way better at intensity forecasting and forecasting track in general. It was pretty good back in 2005, but it's much, much, much better now. And our anomalies as far as sea surface temperatures go, they were really high 3 weeks ago. Now they're about average. We're really not that far above average as far as the water temperatures go. The loop current always runs 1 degree to 2 degrees warmer than the rest of the area, and what makes the loop current so special is that it is deep warm. It's not just sea surface warm, it's warm further down into the water, and that's why the loop current gets so much attention, because it can churn up and upwell, and it's still going to be sitting there at 82, 83 degrees. And later in the summer, it'll be at 84, 85. So even as a hurricane's over the top of it, you get these deep, warm water currents to help just rapidly intensify a system. That being said, it's very possible that systems like what we're getting ready to talk about have shear and dry air over the Gulf of Mexico, and that warm water current really doesn't mean a whole lot. The other awesome thing that this highlights quite nicely is the Gulf Stream, which will probably get a good bit of attention this year as well, just because I think the way the pattern is going to set up, that the Atlantic East Coast could be relatively active this year in comparison to what we've had over the last couple of years. I think the way the pattern is going to set up is that the Atlantic coast of Florida and then up the East Coast will be a little more active than the northern Gulf of Mexico. But that being said, storm systems, storm tracks, they're all dependent on the pattern that does develop. So Any pattern is possible, and we won't know until we're in the pattern. So, those early season predictions I get a little annoyed by, just because, yeah, we know that we're going to have an active season, but where those storms going to go, we don't know. And the pattern really is still up in the air, and we won't know until the storm develops. And then we say, well, this is the pattern that we're in. These are where those storms are most likely to go. So that's what we go. I did fail to mention before we started this, got questions, got comments, put them in the comment section. However you are watching, if you're on Facebook, wherever you're watching, on whatever page, we have all of our pages up. So we will answer those questions. We'll have a time for that at the end, where we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. But let's move on forward here. So zooming in into the Gulf of Mexico. Also, wave heights. So Kristen, you want to hit on the wave heights here a little bit for me?
Yes, I will, but I'm going to move this light just a little bit because I feel
a
like
little
I'm
too bright.
looking into just
there
a
you go,
bright
yeah.
light.
Oh, I
There
can
you
never
go.
even
Staring
see
at
what
it.
we're looking at on the
Screen's
screen
getting
half the
really
time.
close to the tape. Oh, no, you're good.
It's empty.
All right, yeah, you're good.
All right, so what we have going on across parts of the Gulf right now is wave heights that are generally around 3 feet. Closer you get to the coast, it's actually not too bad. I didn't know that wasn't going to advance. Sorry
Yeah,
about
sorry.
that. So the wave height currently is really not too significant for most of the Gulf. We do have a large ridge of high pressure that's trying to work its way in to the northern Gulf of Mexico over the next 24 to, I'd say, maybe 36 hours. So that's kind of going to help calm conditions down a little bit. And we're also going to talk about wave height significantly for our area this weekend, with the tropical system trying to come our way, and how the height locally will be a lot less significant than other parts of the Florida Peninsula. But if you look closer to Mexico, Cancun, as well as the Yucatan Peninsula, sorry, it's the end of my shift, so my brain's kind of coming to a little bit of a freeze here. You can see the wave height is a little bit more significant in that area, and that is because there is a tropical disturbance. It's the remnants of Agatha, which was a tropical system that made landfall on Monday, a Pacific storm on the west coast of Mexico. Now it's moved into and through the southern part of Mexico and through the Yucatan Peninsula, where it is now emerging back over water. So the wave height there is going to be a little bit more significant because there is a tropical low trying to develop at this time. And as it continues to track to the east-northeast, we're expecting wave heights to continue to grow. But for most of our area here in the Panhandle, it won't be too much of a concern because we'll be on the north/west side of the storm. So winds will be out of the north, and that typically will then help push some of the water off of the coastline, which drops our wave height locally. I hope I said that. I know that was a lot
Made
to say,
sense to me.
but
Yeah.
it just all
that
kind
was
of
right.
came
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, I got it.
So our tropical outlook here is showing off kind of what's going on. As I mentioned, that tropical low, the remnants of Agatha. You can see it here on the map on Tuesday, I believe. That's where the L was located. It really got ripped to shreds moving overland. It did produce very heavy rainfall and quite a bit of flooding across southern Mexico. I believe I read an article headline that
Few
said there's
landslides.
quite a few people missing still. So pretty powerful first storm of the season for the Pacific hurricane season. For the Atlantic, once it crosses into the Gulf, then it will be considered an Atlantic storm. Just towards the east of Menda, or was that Merida? Okay, that
Sure.
general area. You can see development as that wave is making its way slowly to the northeast. It's still pretty unorganized right now, but it does have potential to redevelop, and a pretty high chance that we're actually going to see something come from this. Even just within the past 12 hours, these numbers have jumped from 50% at 48 hours to now 70%. And from 5 days out from 70 to 80%. So pretty high confidence that we are going to get likely a named storm that will track generally to the northeast. Forecast models have been pretty consistent on the path here. The only difference I think that may come within the next 3 to 4 days is how far north it goes, whether that's to Tampa or if it just scoots into the far southern peninsula and back out to the Atlantic.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, really what we have down there now as far as impact is a tropical depression, right? The difference between what we have and what inevitably will develop and impact the peninsula of Florida is a low-level circulation. Yeah. So that really, we're not going to get a change even if this does become a tropical depression 1, as it will be named, TD1. If we get that number and that designation, still heavy rain for Florida. At most, I could see this becoming a weak tropical storm, say a 35 to 40 knot storm. So that would put it in about 45, 50 mile per hour range. I don't see anything stronger than that just because this is going to run into a whole lot of shear. And the environment for the storm to develop is actually at its best right now. So you see how disorganized that whole thing is, and that's because there's a couple pieces of energy fighting for dominance. That one on the east side of the Yucatan Peninsula is going to eventually win out. It's going to be the winner, but it's still going to be running into a whole lot of shear and a whole lot of dry air over the Gulf of Mexico. So this isn't a major deal by any means, but it is definitely an oddity as far as beginning of the season tropics. South Florida doesn't usually get a whole lot of weak tropical systems to begin with on the season. These things usually go toward the bend, which would make sense because this time of year we're still dealing with cold fronts, so you would expect this to be picked up by a trough and pulled in our direction. However, that's not the case this time around because we got a big old high pressure system sitting right over the top of us. So between us and that storm, high pressure is going to be in place. So we're not talking about any impacts here. And as Kristen pointed out with the wave heights, we're actually going to see our wave heights go down as we get into the weekend because we're going to have a northerly wind, which will promote less surf along the coastline. Now, if you're going, say, 20, 30 miles offshore, yeah, you're probably going to be dealing with 2-3 foot waves and rocking quite a bit. But it will actually be rocking the opposite direction you would expect it to be because the wind will be out of the north. So a whole lot of unorganized activity down there. Eventually we get an area of low pressure to develop. And what does that mean? Well, probably a whole lot of heavy rain. And why do we have this? Well, Grace, you want to highlight some wind shear here?
Why do we have heavy rain in a tropical system?
Yeah, no, I'm saying why are we talking about this not rapidly strengthening?
Oh, well, like you were saying, there's shear out there. There's, not completely perfect factors going in there. You need, not dry air. We've got dry air there. We've got shear. We've got everything. And that loop current, while it was really significant about a month ago, actually those temperatures that we were just looking at are pretty consistent across the board in the southern Gulf there. So as it continues to make its way northeast, we're not looking for a ton of, real ability to be able to strengthen. So that's a good thing. But, as it continues, it is a tropical disturbance or will be a tropical low. So there's always lots of rainfall, attached to that. So anywhere from, north of Tampa down to Miami, that's kind of where we're looking for potential of, it making landfall there. Still, obviously, some question to that as it, hasn't even developed yet. But, we'll keep track of that for you guys. So I saw yesterday anywhere from 5 to maybe 7 inches is what they're calling for right now down for the peninsula. So not really, anything they can't handle as so far. But, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add to this that because that wind shear, that's what we're looking at here. This map is highlighting a whole lot of wind shear. And this wind shear in the upper levels based off of that legend that's at the top of the screen. So where you're seeing the brown colors, that's winds, very high winds that are screaming out of the west to the east. And you'll note where the position of that low is supposed to be by Monday. And note how much wind shear it is going to be dealing with. Now, some of that has to do with what we call diffluence, which is the area of low pressure actually getting help from the upper levels. And the other part has to do with that you've got a little cut in the upper levels off of a jet streak. So you see the little dip that is directly over the panhandle here by Monday. That is a little piece of energy that is going to be helping that diffluence and that jet streak across the peninsula. That doesn't happen a whole lot, especially this time of year, to get a jet streak that far south. But we'll certainly take it, especially when we're talking about any kind of tropical system. Now, the possibilities here that we've seen with the models is that this can actually sometimes help tropical systems because you're increasing outflow. And the Euro is even highlighting that. So if this is able to get further north and be directly underneath that area of high shear, then this will take on more of an extra tropical look, which will be more of that comma shape and less like the CD disc that you're used to out of hurricanes or tropical systems. But it could still potentially get all the way up to hurricane status somewhere over the Gulf Stream. Now, Gulf of Mexico, absolutely not. The peninsula of Florida, absolutely not. But out into the Atlantic over the Gulf Stream, around the Carolinas, maybe close to the Outer Banks. I'm not thinking that we're really going to see a whole lot of impact to the U.S. mainland here, but maybe right along the coast, maybe some gust up over tropical storm force will be possible there some point in time next week. So again, just to reiterate, not going to be a major deal for the U.S., not going to be a major deal really for the peninsula of Florida either. We could see some isolated flooding issues, but by Saturday, majority of this moisture, thanks to that wind shear, is going to be well off to the east of the peninsula of Florida. So Sunday, we'll see conditions improving. By Monday, if you're down in South Florida, you're not even going to know that there was a tropical system the day before. It's going to be dry and sunny and warm and typical Florida weather, hot and dry. So that's what we're talking about here. If you're planning to go down to South Florida, say this weekend, or possibly, see, I keep sinking in the chair. If you're planning to go down there, I would say keep the plans, because you're not going to run into major issues. You're going to have some rain for a couple of days. Maybe not wanting to travel to South Florida on, say, Saturday as the heart of that. As the heart of that storm is moving over top of you, but beyond that, you're really talking about 1 to maybe 1.5 bad days of weather, and it's mainly just going to be rain. So I wouldn't cancel any plans by any means if you're planning to head down the peninsula. And certainly if you're here on vacation or planning to come down to the Panhandle to, say, I don't know, this weekend for Gulf Coast Jam, the weather's going to be great. Yeah. So don't worry about it. It will be hot. I would say, hydrate, the
sunscreen.
Sunscreen,
a lot of it.
Sunscreen and lots of water.
Yeah.
You can drink the other beverages too, but make sure you're also
having water, but
drinking water between those beverages,
yeah.
Because it will be very warm. We might see some locations this weekend touching the mid, possibly even upper 90s, maybe 96, 97 in a couple locations. So it's going to be very warm, and even along the coast. Typically, when we have the wind out of the north, we're talking about temperatures very consistent from our inland areas all the way down to the coast. We don't usually see a whole lot of variation because the water doesn't play a role when the wind's out of the north. So it will be warm all the way down to the coast by this weekend. So let's get to the hurricane outlook here. And I promise you, now that we've gotten through the storm, we're going to be a little bit quicker with this, and we'll get to some of your questions. CSU stands for Colorado State University, and NOAA, of course, stands for the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. They are the two.
AVG.
Do what?
AVG.
AVG stands for average.
Just making sure.
Okay, so that's the average of our Atlantic basin over the last 30 years. We get a change in the average every 30 years. They update it. This is actually a slight increase from the previous 30 years that changed over, I believe it was last year, right? Last year was the first year that we had the new average.
Yep.
So you know that it is expected to be above average. 19 storms from Colorado State University, number of named storms, 14 to 21 from NOAA. So both of them are predicting an above average number of named storms. Both are predicting above average number of hurricanes, and both of them are predicting a slightly above average number of major hurricanes. And I would agree with this. Most of what goes into the predictions here is we refer to as oscillations, which is the El Nino or La Nina pattern on the Pacific side. So that kind of changes the overall circulation of the global weather environment. And when we change that, we change what the conditions look like over the Atlantic. So that's what really is the main factor into the forecasting for a tropical season. The second main factor is sea surface temperatures. So they look at sea surface temperatures and they say, are these warmer than average? Are they colder than average? And they look at the variability between the sea surface temperatures compared to average. And that's how we get these long range predictions. If you're wondering an analog for this year, last year. Last year's a great analog for this year because we have almost the exact same setup, the exact same water, and La Nina still in place. So it's very possible that we see a very close repeat to the number of storms that we had last year, which, go figure, was 19. So no surprise that that's the number of named storms predicted for this year. Don't remember exactly how many hurricanes we had last year. I want to say it was 8 or 9, right? I know we had 4 majors.
I was going to say, I was thinking major, so it was like 4 or 5.
I know we had 4 majors because we had Teddy, we had Ida, and then there were 2 more, but I can't remember what they are. Brain's drawing a blank. But anyways, all this to be said that we know very well here in the Panhandle, it doesn't matter how many storms there are. It only matters if you're affected by them.
Yeah, they impact you. That's why we don't remember half of them.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the ones that impacted us,
Yeah.
and we had quite a few last year. We had, I think, 5 direct impact systems and 6 indirect impact systems where we were either dealing with tropical moisture or dealing with the system itself. So no surprise that what we're talking about with the current setup, that this is the current outlook is for June, is that's where you typically see the development. And most of the time, those systems down there, they usually come in our direction or toward the bend. Remember Elsa last year.
Yeah, I was going to say this setup for this one a little bit reminds me of Elsa, just because we had winds out of that northeast and we had a totally clear day while,
Right.
Tampa was dealing with not a totally clear day.
Yeah, that's right.
Last
They
year.
had a pretty nasty day, and we were bright and sunny, and it was actually quite nice
And
when
you're like,
Elsa
oh,
was
there's
going
a
down.
storm going on? Not here.
Yeah.
Then that's going to be kind of similar. We're really going to be so far away from the center this time that we're going to have very little influence from it whatsoever. We're not going to have that much of a breeze. The breeze will be out of the northeast, and that's why I'm talking about the heat for this weekend, because that's all you're really going to notice is it's going to be hot. If you're outside for an extended period of time, you're going to be like, wow, it's really warm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the favored conditions, it makes sense, especially, Gulf heats up faster than the Atlantic. Usually this is when we start to see high pressure building across the Gulf of Mexico. So this is typically when we would see weak systems that are what we refer to as, now, I guess the National Hurricane Center kind of refers to them as shorties. And we had that. We already
I didn't
had
know that.
I didn't know that.
we already had that. I think not this past weekend, the weekend before, where we got that 10% designation out of
Yes. Yeah.
that system. It didn't end up being classified as tropical because I don't think it spent enough time over water,
yeah.
and it never really had a closed low-level circulation. So although wind speed and rain and whatever, and the formation of the system, at least on radar at the surface,
It did look like
it looked like a
yeah.
tropical system, but if you looked at the upper levels, it did not look like a tropical system. So you could make an argument that it was, but it kind of hard to say. So briefly going over here, Grace, you want to take us through the Saffir-Simpson scale?
Yes, this is our hurricane categories. This is what we use to classify hurricanes. Oh, and no, it's okay. The screen went blank for a second. But yeah, so all the way from Cat 1 to 5. Now, once you are up to Category 3, that is considered a major hurricane. So Agatha this past weekend actually made landfall as a major hurricane because it was Cat 3. It didn't make it up to Cat 3? Okay. Well, never mind then.
Cat 2 made 110-mile-per-hour landfall.
And then anywhere above that, so 4 or 5 are, are Harveys, are Michaels, things that are going to cause extreme catastrophic damage, things that you will be, obviously informed about beforehand. And they'll probably be making national news before they make landfall anywhere. So Category 1, 2, right now, at least for the next month or so, that's probably what we would be looking at, or maybe even 3, what we'd be looking at in terms of the strength that, tropical storms could take on as they, make their way across the Atlantic, or from that gyre formation that we are watching usually about this time of year as well. So, yeah, I would say, anywhere from Cat 1 to 3, like at least 3, you're going to be wanting to, take evacuation as a possibility there, and 4 and 5, you'll definitely be in the know beforehand when those things do occur.
Chris, you want to add anything?
I just think regardless of the category, you should pay very close attention to the impacts to your location. Obviously, the categories are there for a reason, to give you kind of an idea of how it may impact your location, how much damage it could do. But we've seen so many times how much a non-major hurricane can have devastating rainfall and flooding and wind impact if it doesn't move over an area for a long period of time. So definitely pay attention to the categories for the hurricanes, because obviously a 3 or higher is going to be significant. It's going to cause a lot of damage, but you should take all hurricanes and all warnings seriously and pay very close attention to the impacts of the forecast, not just the number, because if you're only thinking, oh, it's only like a Cat 2, I don't have to worry about anything, but it's a Cat 2 and it's not really going to move over your location very quickly. It's going to sit there and drop extreme rainfall, still produce strong winds, and you could be in a really bad situation if you don't consider that on top of any other evacuation plans that you might already have going on.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Think back to Fred last year, right? We had the closed circulation move basically directly over the top of where the majority of people live in the Panhandle here. And a lot of people were like, hey, that was the most hurricane-y tropical storm I've ever experienced. And they were right. I mean, it was a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm. It was basically a Category 1. And it didn't move very fast inland. It was only moving at about 8 miles per hour at most, and times was moving about 6 miles per hour. And we saw nearly a foot of rain in some locations. So, think about where you are and what kind of impacts you're going to see. I mean, I like to use Michael as an example just because we saw a wide range of damaging effects from Michael, and Michael obviously being a Category 5 on the catastrophic end of things. But if you go to, say, Freeport or Defuniak Springs, they didn't really see a whole lot from Michael because they were on the northwest side of it, and they had some rain and some gusty winds, but there wasn't major devastating effects versus what you had in Bay, Washington, Calhoun, Jackson, even Holmes County and Gulf County, where you saw the devastating wind as well as the rain. And then even if you go out to Franklin County, devastating out there as well, but for different reasons, because of storm surge, right? So think about the impacts that you're going to see versus what the storm actually is. It doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It is impacts over storms, impacts over the wind speeds in general. Obviously, for me, 3, 4, and 5, leave. Don't stay for a 3, 4, and 5. 1 and 2, make your best judgment. I would say 2, direct impact on a 2. You might want to consider leaving because obviously if it's a slow moving and high end 2, like what we just saw with Agatha and Mexico, it can be very dangerous and can cause extreme damage. So think about that when you get into that 2 category. 1, I mean, we basically had a 1 last year, Fred. You're going to be able to ride out, in most situations, you're going to be able to ride out a 1 and be okay. You're going to have damage to clean up. You're going to have things to pick up, and you may have some flooding issues as well. But, that's kind of my rationale behind all of it anyways. But, you have to make the best decision for yourself. And, again, focus on those impacts, which goes back to this. And I know Michael is not on either one of these lists. It is not because Michael wasn't devastating. It's just that didn't make these lists. All right. So I just want to preface that because I was looking at it last night and I was like, people are going to be like, why isn't Michael on there? It's just not. Okay. It's close. It just didn't make either one of these lists. So as far as costs go, you have to think about population centers.
Yeah.
And that's where you're going to see the money go up. More people affected, the more money is going to be taken. And there's a storm from last year right there, Ida, $76.5 billion. And you have to think that all those areas between Louisiana and even New York State being affected with that. Remember, this was still classified as extratropical when it was moving over New York City, where it caused a lot of flooding. So again, going back to category doesn't always matter. Look, Sandy affecting New Jersey and New York, $80 billion, category 1. Technically, it was post-tropical when it made landfall. So we're talking, not even a Category 1 storm producing $80 billion worth of damage. And Katrina, which everybody always says, it was a Category 5. Yeah, it was a Category 5 over the Gulf. Made landfall as a Category 3 and still caused $180 billion worth of damage because the levees failed. We had a ton of flooding in New Orleans, another big population center. And then obviously Harvey, you're talking about market number, 4? Houston. So massive market, massive amounts of flooding because the storm didn't move. How about the strongest hurricanes based off of wind? So this is where people are going to be mad that Michael's not on the list. Because Michael was certainly a very, very strong storm, but based off of wind speed, Michael came in at 162, so does not make the list as the top 5. Now, as far as landfalling storms, Michael is one of 4. Right? There's only 4 Category 5s to ever make landfall in the U.S., so it is definitely on the list for strongest landfalling systems, but systems in the Atlantic Basin and strong, it's not as high up the list as you would believe it would be. The lowest pressures, Patricia got very, very close to what we call the maximum on the lowest potential pressure, which is about 870. That's the theoretical maximum for the Atlantic Basin based off of ocean heat content and just what the atmosphere can produce. And you see 210 mile per hour winds, which is unbelievable. I can't even imagine that. That Patricia did actually make landfall in Mexico as a Category 5. It wasn't quite that strong when it made landfall, and it had a very, very small core, so it fell apart almost immediately making landfall, kind of counter to what some of these other storms did. But most of us remember Wilma as well, because Wilma was a Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean storm, and eventually ended up making landfall in Florida as a Category 3 as it weakened when it moved through the Gulf. Gilbert, I don't remember and have never looked up, so I'm not going to talk about. Labor Day, one of the 4 Category 5s to make landfall, and that was through the Keys, and it is the storm of record as far as strongest landfalling systems in the U.S. And then Rita, also a Gulf hurricane, 2005 as well, was a Category 5 over the Gulf, eventually made landfall as a Category 4. So Kristen, walk us through the names, and this is where we'll wrap things up. We'll try to get to a couple questions as well.
He wants me to do this because he knows I'm going to butcher some of them.
Yes, I do. Go for it.
So we have Alex, Bonnie, Colin, Danielle, Earl, Fiona. That was the one I was trying to remember before. Gaston, right?
Yep.
Okay. Hermine.
Yep.
Ian, Julia, Carl, Lisa, Martin, Nicole, Owen, Paula, Richard, Sherry, Tobias, Virginie, and Walter.
Nice. Very nicely done.
I'm excited for Earl.
Earl.
I really hope that
I
one
hope
is just
it's
a fish storm.
Me
Yeah,
too.
that seems like a fish storm name to
There
me.
goes Earl
yeah.
doing circles out in the
Yeah,
Atlantic.
just like how Bill was. Yeah,
Fiona reminds me of Shrek.
yeah.
Right.
And then Gaston is
Yeah.
Beauty and the Beast. And then Hermine, which in my brain goes to Hermione.
There's gonna be lots of Hermione jokes with that one.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people remember Hermine the last time it was on the list because it made landfall near Tallahassee, so in the Bend. So that was
Well, let's hope
Category
this
1.
one will go somewhere else.
Yeah, let's hope that this one is not relevant to us whatsoever. Let's hope that all these names on the list don't come anywhere close to us.
Yeah,
That would be
just fish storms.
fantastic. So again, we're going to wrap things up right here. I am going to go through some questions and see what we can answer. If you guys see any questions that you want to tackle, go for it. It won't let me scroll on this page. Why won't it let me scroll?
I don't see any questions on our
We just have-
WMBB
I was
page.
going to say, we have a lot of fans
Oh, okay.
commenting.
Well, okay. I did have a question about going down to St. Pete for the weekend. We did address that, saying, go for it. Don't alter any plans because of a rainmaker that's going to be going down there. If
Unless you're trying to
on-
go out on the boat, you're
Yeah.
probably gonna see a washout day.
If you're like
Or
able to go another
morning.
time, maybe push it back.
It's just one day though.
Yeah,
I mean,
but-
it's
yeah.
one day. You're gonna have relatively bad weather for one day. I mean, if you're there for a trip more than one day, yeah, don't cancel
Oh,
any
yeah.
plans.
If you're only going
Yeah.
for a weekend, though, I'd be like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it is just a weekend trip, then maybe look for something else. But yeah, and then I got someone commenting on the Gulf currents, which we highlighted. Seriously, any questions that you guys want answered? I did see some suggestions for the names of tropic topicers.
What's the weekend gonna be like for Gulf Coast Jam?
Yeah, we can tackle that. The weekend for this weekend, because we've got a big concert in town, Gulf Coast Jam ongoing. I would prepare for hot. Lots and lots of liquids before, during, and after the event. I've been several times. I will be out there at times this weekend as well. I will be drinking beverages and water.
And wearing his jorts.
And I will.
Oh man.
I won't have jorts on,
Let's
but
get a picture of
but
that.
I will. But I probably, if I go out there early enough, I will have sunscreen on, and I will have water attached to me as well. So.
Oh, you know what? Bug spray. We'll just put that out there too.
I got
It's
the
not
yellow
weather
bugs
related,
died last year.
but-
Yeah, I mean we do have some yellow flies. I wonder if they'll be out there this year. I mean, we had depending on the
I feel
wind.
like better safe than sorry.
Yeah, bug spray.
Well, if you're
going to
be out there at night, for sure, bug spray.
Yeah, that's probably a good call too. But yeah, the weather does look nice. I'd say Friday is really the only day that we could have some pop-up issues. We do have a front coming in on Friday, but the last couple of model runs that I've seen
It's
have
just
dried
Like, I had, like,
the front out.
It's a
30 or
little
20%.
sad.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I had 30 the last couple of days, and I thought that was a little low, but based off of the last couple of model runs I've seen, 30 might be high. So
Yeah.
we'll see. And then there's a possibility the GFS keeps trying to sling some moisture back across that front on Sunday late in the day, but I'm not buying that yet. It's just because we're gonna have some dry air around. So we'll see. But I think the forecast looks good Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you don't have the Storm Track 13 app, download it. It's great. It gives you all kinds of information, especially notifies you when lightning's nearby, regardless of being at Gulf Coast Jam or going to the beach. It is the summer season. We get storms nearly every day from this point until the end of August. So, the Storm Track 13 app is great for that, highlighting when lightning is nearby and when you should seek shelter, plus warnings, all of that kind of stuff. Make sure you got your location services turned on if you are using the Storm Track 13 app so that you can get those warnings. I use it all the time. I get a notification every day that there's lightning near Hosford.
And Vernon.
And
Mariana.
Clarksville and Vernon. Yep, all three of those places every day. It tells me that there's lightning nearby. So you guys that live there, you know better than me. There's a lot of lightning. So yeah, I think that's where we're gonna wrap it up. Good news, not dealing with a whole lot of tropical activity here. If you're headed down to the peninsula, check the forecast locally down there. Looks like a lot of rain, could be some potential flooding, especially for South Florida. I'd say anything above Fort Myers is kind of iffy on how much rain is gonna fall. Depends on how north that low goes. But South Florida, especially Fort Myers further south down to the Keys, Miami, looks pretty wet,
Yeah.
at least through Saturday night. And then Sunday looks like a big improvement as drier air will come in on the backside. And thankfully the system won't linger that much. So good news. Yeah, I think that's it. We got anything else? Y'all want to add anything?
I think we're good.
No?
Thanks, Tom. Tom says wrap it up.
See you next week.
We'll see you. We
Right.
may or may not be back next week. It depends on the tropical activity. Like I said, we're gonna try to bring you more content by bringing you less content. So we're gonna do things when things are active.
Quality over quantity.
That's right. I think inevitably we're probably gonna end up with far more shows than what we did last year. We ended up with around 20, I think. But we're just not going to do them every week. So we're going to be scheduling them out. Make sure you're paying attention to when we do them, because when we're up here talking, it'll be for a reason. We won't just be spitballing. But we do have fun. It's laid back. It's tropical season. A lot of people are still hesitant to deal with the tropics, but it's where we live, right? We deal with the tropics. We get tropical activity almost every year, if not every year. So it's one of those things you got to live with if you're going to live here. So we're going to try to keep it light and breezy, pun intended. Yeah, Ross being cheesy. It's time to wrap it up. Grace
Yeah.
giving me the stink eye. I see it. All right, that's going to do it. We'll wrap it up. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching Tropic Topics, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning and Mariana Toyota. Be sure to download the Storm Track 13 app today to stay up to date with all of the latest weather information. For more local news, weather, sports, and more, visit mypanhandle.com.